Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. We are in Chapter 12, page 420. Chewbacca thought he was going mad. The prison cell was flooded with hot, blinding light that seared his sensitive Wookiee eyes. Not even his huge hands and hairy arms thrust over his face could entirely protect him from the glare. And to add to his misery, a high-pitched whistle blared into the cubicle, tormenting his keen senses of hearing. He roared in agony, but his guttural roars were drowned out by the piercing, screeching noise. Oh, I can hear it. It hurts. The Wookiee paced back and forth within the confines of the cell, moaning pitifully. He pounded at the thick walls in desperation, wanting anyone to come and free him. While he pounded, the whistle that nearly exploded his eardrum suddenly stopped, and the deluge of light flickered and went out. Chewbacca staggered a step with the sudden absence of torture, and then moved to one of the cell walls to try and detect whether anyone was approaching to release him. But the thick walls revealed nothing, and, maddened to fury, Chewbacca slammed a giant fist against the wall. What the... But the wall stood undamaged and as impenetrable as before. Or impenetrable. Never mind. And Chewbacca realized it would take more than a Wookiee brute strength to topple it. Despairing of his chances of breaking through the cell to freedom, Chewbacca shuffled toward the bed where the box of C-3PO parts had been placed. Idly at first, and then with more interest, Chewbacca began poking through the box. It dawned on him that it might be possible to repair the disjointed droid. Not only would doing so pass the time, but it might be helpful to have 3PO back in working condition. He picked up the golden head and gazed into its darkened eyes. He held the head and barked a few soliloquizing words as if to prepare the robot for the joy of re-entry into activity, or for the disappointment of Chewbacca's possible failure to reconstruct him properly. Then, quite delicately for a creature of his size and strength, the giant Wookiee placed the staring head atop the bronze torso. Tentatively, he began experimenting with 3PO's tangle of wires and circuits. His mechanical skills had previously been only tested in repairs on the Millennium Falcon, so he wasn't at all certain he could complete the delicate task. Chewbacca jiggled and fiddled with the wires, baffled by the intricate mechanisms, when suddenly 3PO's eyes lit up. A whine came from inside the robot. It sounded vaguely like 3PO's normal voice, but was so low and so slow that the words were unintelligible. Imperial Storm Troop. Bewildered, Chewbacca scratched his furry head and studied the broken robot intently. An idea came to him, and he tried switching one wire to another plug. Instantly, 3PO began speaking in his normal voice. I assumed it would be normal voice, but I wanted to wait and make sure. What he had to say sounded like words from a bad dream. Excuse me. Chewbacca, the head of C-3PO cried. Watch out, there are Imperial stormtroopers hidden in... He paused, as if reliving the whole traumatic experience, and then he cried, Oh no, I've been shot! Chewbacca shook his head in sympathy. All he could do at this point was to try and put the rest of the C-3PO back together again. Quite possibly it was the first time Han Solo had ever screamed. Never had he endured such excruciating torment. Never mind. He was strapped to a platform that angled away from the floor at approximately 45 degrees. While he was strapped there, electric currents of searing power shot through his body at short intervals, each jolt more painfully powerful than the last. He squirmed to free himself, but his agony was so severe that it was all he could do just to remain conscious. Standing near the torture rack, Darth Vader silently watched Han Solo's ordeal. Seeming neither pleased nor displeased, he watched until he had seen enough, and then the Dark Lord turned his back on the writhing figure and left the cell, the door sliding behind him to muffle Solo's anguished screams. Outside the torture chamber, Boba Fett waited for Lord Vader and Lando Calrissian, and the Administrator's aide. I don't know. With obvious disdain, Vader turned to Fett. Bounty hunter, he addressed the man in the black marked silver helmet. If you are waiting for your reward, you will have to wait until I have Skywalker. The self-assured Boba Fett appeared unruffled by this news. I am in no hurry, my lord. My concern is that Captain Solo not be damaged. The reward from Jabba the Hutt is double if he's alive. His pain is considerable, Bounty Hunter, Vader hissed, but he will not be harmed. What about Leia and the Wookiee? Lando asked with some concern. You will find them well enough, Vader answered, but, he added with unmistakable finality, they must never again leave this city. That was never a condition of our agreement, Calrissian urged, nor was giving Han to this bounty hunter. Perhaps you think you're being treated unfairly, Vader said sarcastically. No, Lando said, glancing at his side. Good, Vader continued, adding a veiled threat. It would be most unfortunate if I had to leave a permanent garrison here. Bowing his head reverently, Lando Calrissian waited until Darth Vader had turned and swept into the waiting elevator with a silver-armored bounty hunter. Then, taking his aide with him, the administrator of Cloud City strode swiftly down a white-walled corridor. This deal's becoming worse all the time, Lando complained. Maybe you should have tried to negotiate with him, the aide suggested. Lando looked at his aide grimly. He was beginning to realize that the deal with Darth Vader was giving nothing to him. And beyond that, it was bringing harm to people he might have called friends. Finally, he said, low enough not to be heard by any of Vader's spies, I've got a bad feeling about this. It shows up in like every single Star Wars thing. Never mind. C-3PO was at last beginning to feel something like his old self. The Wookiee had been busily working on reconnecting the droid's many wires and internal circuits, and just now was beginning to figure out how to attach the limbs. So far, he had reattached the head to the torso and had successfully completed connecting an arm. The rest of 3PO's parts still lay on the table with wires and circuits hanging out of the severed joints. But though the Wookiee was diligently working to complete his task, the golden droid began to complain vociferously. Never mind. Annoyingly, there we go. Well, something's not right, he fussed, because now I can't see. The patient Wookiee barked and adjusted a wire in 3PO's neck, at last the robot could see again, and he breathed a little mechanical sigh of relief. There, now, that's better. But it wasn't much better. When he cast his newly activated sensor gaze toward where his chest should be, he saw his back. Wait, oh my, what have you done? I'm backwards! 3PO sputtered. You flea-bitten furball. Only an overgrown mophead like you would be stupid enough to put my head... The Wookiee growled menacingly. He had forgotten what a complainer this droid was, and this cell was too small for him to listen to any more of that. Before 3PO knew what was happening to him, the Wookiee lumbered over and pulled the wire. Instantly, the grumbling ceased, and the room became quiet again. Then there was a familiar scent nearing the cell. The Wookiee sniffed the air and hurried to the door. The cell door buzzed open, and a ragged, exhausted Han Solo was shoved in by 2 Imperial stormtroopers. The troopers left, and Chewbacca quickly moved to his friend. Where was I? Embracing him with relief. Han's face was pale, with dark circles under his eyes. It seemed that he was on the verge of collapse, and Chewbacca barked his concern to his longtime companion. No, Han said wearily. I'm all right. The door opened once again, and Princess Leia was thrown into the cell by the stormtroopers. She was still dressed in her elegant cloak, but like Han, she looked tired and disheveled. When the stormtroopers left and the door slid shut behind them, Chewbacca helped Leia over to Han. The two gazed at one another with great emotion, then reached out and tightly embraced. After a moment, they kissed tenderly. While Han still held her, Leia weakly asked him, "Why are they doing this? I can't understand what they're up to." Han was as puzzled as she. They had me howling on the scan grid, but they never asked me any questions. Then the door slid open again, admitting Lando and two of his Cloud City guards. "Get out of here, Lando," Han snarled. If he had felt stronger, he would have let to attack his traitorous friend. "Shut up a minute and listen," Lando snapped. "I'm doing what I can to make this easier for you. This ought to be good." Han remarked caustically. Vader has agreed to turn Leia and Chewie over to me, explained Lando. They'll have to stay here, but at least they'll be safe. Leia gasped, what about Han? Lando looked solemnly at his friend. I didn't know you had a price on your head. Vader has given you to the bounty hunter. The princess quickly looked at Han, concern flooding her eyes. You don't know much about much, Han said to Calrissian. If you think Vader won't want us dead before this is all over. He doesn't want you at all, Lando said. He's after someone called Skywalker. The two prisoners caught their breath at the casual mention of his name. Han seemed puzzled. Luke? I don't get it. The princess's mind was racing. All the facts were beginning to fit together in a terrible mosaic. In the past, Vader had wanted Leia because of her political importance in the war between the Empire and the Rebel Alliance. Now she was almost beneath his notice, useful for only one possible function. Lord Vader has set a trap for him, Lando added, and Leia finished his statement. We're the bait. All this to just get the kid? What's so important about him? Don't ask me, but he's on his way. Luke's coming here? Lando Calrissian nodded. You fixed this all pretty good, Han growled, spitting his words at Lando, friend. As he snarled the last accusing word, Han Solo's strength returned in a rush. He put all of his might into a punch that sent Lando reeling. Instantly, the two former friends were engaged in a furious close-quarters battle. Lando's two guards moved closer to the two grappling opponents and began striking with Han with the butts of their laser rifles. One powerful blow struck Han on the chin and sent him flying across the room, blood streaming from his jaw. Chewbacca began to growl savagely and started for the guards. As they raised their laser weapons, Lando shouted, "Don't shoot!" Bruised and winded, the administrator turned to Han. I've done what I can for you. I'm sorry it's not better. But I've got my own problems, he said. Then turning to leave the cell, Lando Calrissian added, I've already stuck my neck out farther than I should. Yeah, Han Solo retorted, regaining his composure. You're a real hero. When Lando had left with his guards, Leia and Chewbacca helped Han back to his feet and led led him to one of the bunks. He eased his weary, battered, I don't know why I can't speak today, body onto the bunk, and Leia took a piece of her cloak and began gently dabbing at his chin, cleaning off the oozing blood. As she did so, she started to chuckle softly. You certainly have a way with people, she teased. R2-D2's head swiveled atop his barrel-like body as the scanners perceived the star-studded void of the Bespin system. The speeding X-Wing had just entered the system and was swooping back through space like a great white bird. I thought they were gray. Well, in this Yoda's blue, so I guess I really shouldn't be surprised. The R2 unit had a lot to communicate to his pilot. His electronic thoughts were tumbling out one on top of the other and were translated on the cockpit scope. The grim-faced Luke quickly responded to the first of R2's urgent questions. Yes, Luke replied. I'm sure 3PO is with them. The little robot whistled an excited exclamation. Just hold on, Luke said patiently. We'll be there soon. R2's turning head perceived the regal clusters of stars, his innards warm and cheerful, as the X-Wing continued like a celestial arrow. Digimon. Toward a planet with a city in the clouds. Lando Calrissian and Darth Vader stood near the hydraulic platform that dominated the huge carbon freezing chamber. The Dark Lord was quiet while aides hurried to prepare the room. The hydraulic platform was housed within a deep pit in the center of the chamber and was surrounded by countless steam pipes and enormous chemical tanks of varying shapes. Standing guard with laser rifles clutched in their hands were 4 armored-suited Imperial stormtroopers. Darth Vader turned to Calrissian after appraising the chamber. The facility is crude, he remarked, but it should suit our needs. Forgive me. One of Vader's officers rushed to the Sith Lord's side. Lord Vader, he reported, ship approaching, X-Wing class. Good, Vader said coldly. Monitor Skywalker's progress and allow him to land. We'll have the chamber ready for him shortly. We only use this facility for carbon freezing, the administrator of Cloud City said nervously. If you put him in there, it might kill him. but Vader had already considered that possibility. He knew a way to find out just how powerful this freezing unit was. I don't wish the Emperor's prize to be damaged. We'll test it first. He caught the attention of one of his stormtroopers. Bring in Solo, the Dark Lord commanded. Lando quickly glanced at Vader. He hadn't been prepared for the pure evil that was manifested in this terrifying being. The X-Wing speedily made its descent and began to pierce the dense cloud blanket enveloping the planet. Luke checked his monitor screens with growing concern. Maybe R2 had more information than he was getting on his own panel. He tapped out a question to the robot. You haven't picked up any patrol ships? R2-D2's reply was negative, and so Luke, thoroughly convinced that his arrival was thus far undetected, pressed his ship onward toward the city of his troubled vision. There we go. 6 of the pig-like Ugnaughts frantically prepared the carbon freezing chamber for use, while Lando Calrissian and Darth Vader, now the true master of Cloud City, observed the hasty activity. As they scurried about the carbon freezing platform, the Ugnaughts lowered a network of pipes resembling some alien giant's circulatory system. I don't know why I said it like that. Into the pit. They raised the carbonite hoses and hammered them into place. Then the 6 humanoids lifted the heavy coffin-like container and set it securely onto the platform. Boba Fett rushed in leading a squad of 6 Imperial stormtroopers. The troopers shoved and pulled Han and Leia and the Wookiee in front of them, forcing them to hurry into the chamber. Strapped to the Wookiee's broad back was the partially reassembled C-3PO, whose unattached arm and legs were roughly bundled against his gilded torso. The droid's head, facing the opposite direction from Chewbacca's, frantically turned around to see what they were, where they were going and what lay in store for them. Vader turned to the bounty hunter. Put him in the carbon freezing chamber. What if he doesn't survive? The calculating Boba Fett asked. He's worth a lot to me. The Empire will compensate you for the loss, Vader said succinctly. Anguished, Leia protested. No. Chewbacca threw his head back and gave out a bellowing Wookiee howl. Then he charged directly at the line of stormtroopers guarding Han. Screaming in panic, C-3PO raised one functioning arm to protect his face. Wait, the robot yelled. What are you doing? But the Wookiee wrestled and grappled with the troopers, undaunted by their number or by 3PO's frightened shrieks. Oh no, don't hit me! The droid begged, trying to protect his disassembled parts with his arm. No, he doesn't mean it. Calm down, you hairy fool. More stormtroopers had come into the room and joined the fight. Some of the troopers began to club the Wookiee with the butts of their rifles, banging against 3PO in the process. Ouch! The droid screamed. I didn't do anything. It's like me and my mom. I get hit a lot. The stormtroopers had begun to overpower Chewbacca and were about to smash him in the face with their weapons when, over the sounds of the fray, Han shouted, Chewie, no, stop it, Chewbacca! Bad! I don't know why. My dogs would be kind of annoying, so yeah, never mind. Only Han Solo could deflect the maddened Wookiee from this battle. Straining against the hold of his guards, Han broke away from them and rushed over to break up the fight. Vader signaled his guards to let Han go and signaled the battling stormtroopers to stop the fight. Han gripped the massive forearms of his hairy friend to calm him down, then gave him a stern look. The flustered 3PO was still fussing and fuming. Oh yes, stop, stop. Then, with a robotic sigh of relief, again, thank heavens. Han and Chewbacca faced each other, the former looking grimly into his friend's eyes. For a moment they embraced tightly, then Han told the Wookiee, save your strength for another time, pal, when the odds are better. He mustered a reassuring wink, but the Wookiee was grief-stricken and barked a mournful wail. Aw. Yeah, Han said, trying his best to crack a grin. I know, I feel the same way. Keep well. Han Solo turned to one of the guards. You better chain him until it's over. The subdued Chewbacca did not resist as the stormtrooper guards placed restraining bands around his wrists. He gave his partner another farewell hug, then turned to Princess Leia. He took her in his arms, and they embraced as if they would never let go. Then Leia pressed her lips to his in a lingering kiss of passion. I'm uncomfortable. When their kiss ended, tears were in her eyes. "I love you," she said softly. "I couldn't tell you before, but it's true." He smiled his familiar, cocky smile. "Just remember that, because I'll be back." Then his face grew tender, and he kissed her gently on the forehead. Tears began to roll down her cheeks as Han turned away from her and walked quietly and fearlessly toward the waiting hydraulic platform. The Ugnaughts. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't feel like I am. I think I've said it like 3 different ways before. Rushed to his side and positioned him on the platform, binding his arms and legs tightly onto the hydraulic deck. He stood alone and helpless and gazed one last time at his friends. Chewbacca looked at his friend mournfully, 3PO's head peeking over the Wookiee's shoulder, to get one last look at the brave man. The administrator, Calrissian, watched this ordeal, a solemn look of great regret etched deeply onto his face. And then there was Leia. Her face was contorted with the pain of her grief as she stood regally trying to be strong. Leia's was the last face Han saw when he felt the hydraulic platform suddenly drop. As it dropped, the Wookiee bellowed a final baleful farewell. In that terrible moment, the grieving Leia turned away and Lando grimaced in sorrow. Instantly, fiery liquid began to pour down into the pit in a great cascading shower of fluid and sparks. Chewbacca half turned from the horrifying spectacle, giving 3PO a better view of the process. "They're encasing him in carbonite," the droid reported. "That's high-quality alloy, much better than my own. He could be quite well protected, that is, if he survived the freezing process." Chewbacca quickly glanced over his shoulder at 3PO, silencing his technical description with an angry bark. When the liquid finally solidified, huge metal tongs lifted the smoldering figure from the pit. The figure, which was cooling rapidly, had a recognizably human shape, but was featureless and rocky like an unfinished sculpture. Some of the Hogmen, their hands protected by thick black gloves, approached the metal-encased body of Han Solo and shoved the block over. After the figure crashed onto the platform with a loud metallic clang, the Ugnaughts hoisted it up into the casket-shaped container. Then they attached a box-like electronic device to its side and stepped away. Kneeling, Lando turned some knobs on the device and checked the gauge measuring the temperature of Han's body. He sighed with relief and nodded his head. "He's alive," he informed Han Solo's anxious friends, "and in perfect hibernation." Darth Vader turned to Boba Fett. "He's all yours, bounty hunter," he hissed. "Reset the chamber for Skywalker." "He's just landed, my lord," an aide informed him. "See to it that he finds his way here." Indicating Leia and Chewbacca, Lando told Vader, "I'll take what is mine now." He was determined to whisk them out of Vader's clutches before the Dark Lord. I don't know this word either. I feel like I've seen it before. Reneged. Reneged. On their contract. Never mind. "Take them," Vader said, "but I'm keeping a detachment of troops here to watch over them." "That wasn't part of the bargain," Lando protested hotly. "You said the Empire wouldn't interfere, and—" "I'm altering the bargain. Pray I don't alter it any further." A sudden tightness grasped Lando's throat, a threatening sign of what would happen to him if he gave Vader any difficulty. Lando's hand automatically went to his neck, but in the next moment the unseen hand was released, and the administrator turned to face Leia and Chewbacca. The look in his eyes might have expressed despair, but neither of them cared to look at him at all. Luke and R2 moved cautiously through a deserted corridor. It concerned Luke that thus far they had not been stopped for questioning. No one had asked them for landing permits, identification papers, purpose of visit. No one in Cloud City seemed at all curious about who this young man and his little droid might be, or what they were doing there. It all seemed rather ominous, and Luke was beginning to feel very uneasy. Suddenly he heard a sound at the far end of the corridor. Luke halted, pressing himself close against the corridor wall. R2, thrilled to think that they might be back among familiar droids and humans, began to whistle and beep excitedly. Luke glanced at him to be still, and the little robot emitted one last feeble squeak. Luke then peered around a corner and saw a group approaching from a side hallway. Leading the group was an imposing figure in battered armor and helmet. Behind him, two Cloud City armed guards pushed a transparent case down the corridor. From where Luke stood, it appeared that the case contained a floating, statue-like human figure. Following the case were two Imperial stormtroopers who spotted Luke. Instantly, the troopers took aim and began to fire, but Luke dodged their laser bolts, and before they could shoot another round, the youth fired his blaster, ripping 2 sizzling holes into the stormtroopers' armored chests. As the troopers fell, the 2 guards quickly whisked the encased figure into another hallway, and the armor-clad figure leveled his blaster at Luke, sending a deadly bolt at him. The beam just missed the youth and nicked a large chunk out of the wall next to him, shattering it into a shower of dust-like particles. When the particles had cleared, Luke peeked back around the corner and saw that the nameless attacker, the guards, and the case had all disappeared behind a thick metal door. Hearing sounds behind him, Luke turned to see Leia, Chewbacca, C-3PO, and an unfamiliar man in a cloak moving down yet another hallway and guarded by a small band of Imperial stormtroopers. He gestured to catch the princess's attention. "Leia!" he shouted. "Luke, no!" she exclaimed, her voice charged with fear. "It's a trap!" I genuinely didn't mean to do that. This is going to be another long chapter, isn't it? I can't tell because a pop-up showed up. Anyway, never mind. Leaving R2 trailing behind, Luke ran off to follow them, but when he reached a small anteroom, Leia and the others had disappeared. Luke heard R2 whistling frantically as he scooted toward the anteroom. Yet as the youth swiftly turned, he saw a mammoth metal door crash down in front of the startled robot with a thundering clang. With the slamming of that door, Luke was cut off from the main corridor, and when he turned to find another way out, he saw more metal doors bang shut in the other doorways of the chamber. Meanwhile, R2 stood somewhat dazed by the shock of his close call. If he had rolled just a tiny bit farther into the anteroom, that door would have squashed him into scrap metal. He pressed his metal nose against the door, then gave out a whistle of relief and wandered off in the opposite direction. The anteroom was full of hissing pipes and steam that belched from the floor. Luke began to explore the room and noticed an opening above his head, leading to a place he could not even imagine. He moved forward to get a better look, and as he did, the section of floor he stood on began to rise up slowly. Luke rode up with the lifting platform, determined to face the foe he had traveled so far to meet. Keeping his blaster clutched in his hand, Luke rose into the carbon-freezing chamber. The room was deathly quiet, except for the hissing of steam escaping from some of the pipes in the room. It appeared to Luke that he was the only living creature in this chamber of strange machinery and chemical containers, but he sensed that he was not alone. Vader. He spoke the name to himself as he looked around the chamber. "Lord Vader, I feel your presence. Show yourself," Luke taunted his unseen enemy, "or do you fear me?" While Luke spoke, the escaping steam began to billow out in great clouds. Then, unaffected by the searing heat, Vader appeared and strode through the hissing vapors. Stepping out onto the narrow walkway above the chamber, his black cloak trailing behind him, Luke took a cautious step toward the demonic figure in black and holstered his blaster. He experienced a surge of confidence and felt completely ready to face the Dark Lord as one Jedi against another. There was no need for his blaster. He sensed that the Force was with him, and that, at last, he was ready for this inevitable battle. Slowly, he began to mount the stairs toward Vader. "The Force is with you, young Skywalker," Darth Vader said from above, "but you are not a Jedi yet." Vader's words had a chilling effect. Briefly, Luke hesitated, recalling the words of another former Jedi Knight. "Luke, use the Force only for knowledge and for defense, not as a weapon. Don't give in to hate or anger. They lead the way to the dark side." But throwing aside any fragment of doubt, Luke gripped the smoothly finished handle of his lightsaber and quickly ignited the laser blade. At the same instant, Vader ignited his own laser sword and quietly waited for the young Skywalker to attack. His great hatred for Vader impelled Luke to lunge at him savagely, bringing his sizzling blade down upon Vader's. But effortlessly, the Dark Lord deflected the blow with a defensive turn of his own weapon. Again Luke attacked. Once again their energy blades clashed, and then they stood, staring at one another for an endless moment through their crossed lightsabers. Okay, let's see how long this chapter ended up being. I feel like it was pretty long. Okay, I mean longer than I wanted it to be, but not as long as yesterday. Almost 35 minutes, I think. Or was it almost 36? Anyway, that's not important. Okay, So, in like 2 more days, I'll have 300 videos up on this channel. I should have mentioned something like 10 videos ago, asking you guys what you guys... I say you guys a lot, but what would be a good, I guess, anniversary? I don't know. Oh, and I'm nearing 50 subscribers, so that's something. Should I do something when I get to 50? That'd be kind of cool. I'd have fun. Okay. I think that's enough for today, you guys. And yikes. Okay. What's up, Iggy? I need to remember to get him some food when I get home tonight. I'm rambling again. I'm not even talking about anything. I'm just talking. Okay. Anyway. So, if you guys have any ideas, if you don't, I'm guessing, well, it's like in 2 days, so it's not like I can really get any, word out to you guys to tell me what you'd like to see for my 300th video, but, oh man, I wish my family hadn't been such, I don't want to say let down, but they hadn't been so difficult. I really wanted to, film some stuff yesterday, since we'd be at the movie theater. It didn't work out. Anyway, until next time, goodbye everybody.